All right, so are you ready to unlock some serious learning superpowers?
Oh, I'm always up for that.
Because today we are diving deep
Eat.
to how to learn, well, anything really.
Anything.
Yeah, not just like picking up a new language or learning a new skill, but like the actual art of learning itself.
Ooh, I like that.
So like imagine having that superpower where you just absorb knowledge like a sponge. That's what we're going for today.
Love it. And we've got a great roadmap for this too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be pulling some really good insights from this outline called How to Learn Anything, Mastering the Art of Learning.
Catchy.
It's good stuff.
I like it.
Yeah.
So, okay, where do we even begin with something as massive as learning anything?
Well, I think instead of getting like overwhelmed by the hugeness of it all,
Yeah.
let's zoom in on how our brains actually work,
Okay.
There's this thing called cognitive psychology.
Ooh, fancy.
I know, right? Sounds complicated, but it's actually super cool. It's basically all about how our brains make and strengthen connections whenever we learn something new.
So, like, there's actual science behind this.
Yeah.
It's not just me being...
Totally.
It's not about willpower. It's not about
Oh,
some
baby.
kind of, like, special talent or anything. It's about understanding the mechanics of how it works
Okay.
and then using that to learn way better.
I like that.
Yeah, it's like, imagine you're building a bridge.
Okay.
Every time you drive over that bridge, it becomes stronger, more stable.
Wait, okay.
So think of practicing something repeatedly, like driving over that bridge again and again,
Okay.
and you're making those pathways, in your brain stronger.
Got it.
Yeah,
So it's not just about repetition, it's about like building up those connections in your brain.
it really is. And you wouldn't build a whole bridge in one day, would you?
Probably not, no.
No.
No, it wouldn't end well.
No. And our brains, they kind of learn best when we like space out our learning.
This is where this idea of spaced repetition comes in.
Spaced repetition.
Yeah, it's not just about repetition, it's about timing.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So instead of cramming everything in, like the night before a test or trying to learn a whole language in a weekend, we're better off coming back to it.
Exactly. Spread it out. Yeah, and there's actual research on this too.
Really?
Yeah, studies have shown that spaced repetition can seriously boost how much you remember compared to just cramming it all in.
Interesting.
Like, for example, there was this one study where they found students who used spaced repetition to learn new vocabulary words. They remembered like almost twice as many words.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
It is.
So how do we actually do spaced repetition? Do we just like look at our notes every few days or something?
It's a little more to it than that.
Oh.
Like the perfect schedule for how often you space things out and how many times you repeat them. It actually depends on a few things, like how complicated the stuff you're learning is
All right.
and how you learn best as a person.
Right.
Like, are you a visual learner?
Yeah.
Things like that.
That makes sense.
There's even apps designed just to help you optimize this whole thing.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it can be really helpful.
So spaced repetition isn't just this vague idea. It's actually something we can kind of tailor to our own needs.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've got repetition, but it's not just that, right? There's also this thing, active recall.
Yes, active recall.
I feel like I've heard of that.
This is a big one.
Okay.
It's about pulling the information out of your brain instead of just passively reviewing it.
Right.
It's like, imagine, instead of just looking at the bridge you built,
Yeah.
you're quizzing yourself on how you built it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So instead of just reading a chapter in a textbook,
Exactly.
I should try to, like, explain it to someone else.
Yeah.
Or write down what I remember without looking.
That's it. That's exactly it.
Okay.
And the cool thing about active recall is that it makes your brain work harder, which actually helps you remember it even better.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's like the more you retrieve it, the better you remembered it in the long run.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of this other technique that's mentioned, interleaved practice.
It
Is that
is.
like mixing up different subjects
Yes.
as you go?
It's all about mixing things up. Yeah, like instead of just building bridges, now you're building roads, you're building tunnels.
Okay, so you're still applying the same...
Similar skills.
Yeah, like the
And
same.
you're switching it up
But-
so your brain stays engaged.
So it's like cross-training for our brains.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like that.
And there's research on this one too.
Really?
Yeah. They found that interleaving, it can actually help you remember things better for longer.
Wow.
And it helps you, like, actually use what you learned in different situations.
Oh, that's helpful. Yeah, so like, for example, one study, they had students working on math problems, right?
Okay.
And the ones who mixed up different types of problems,
Okay.
they did way better on the test later on than the students who just practiced the same type of problem over and over.
Oh, interesting. So mixing it up isn't just about keeping things interesting. It's actually,
It helps you learn better.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a smarter way to learn.
So we've got these like amazing techniques, spaced repetition, active recall, mixing it all up.
It's a good toolbox.
It's a lot.
It is.
But even with all that, sometimes I think the hardest part is just like knowing where to start.
Right.
There's so much we could be learning.
Totally.
How do we even choose?
I think that's where setting goals comes in.
Okay. Yeah.
It's easy to feel totally overwhelmed with all the information out there.
Yeah.
But if you come at learning with like a clear, specific goal,
Okay.
suddenly it feels way more doable.
So less, I want to learn everything.
Yeah.
And more like, I want to learn to speak Spanish in 6 months.
Exactly. That's a great example.
Yes.
Or I want to understand the basics of like, quantum physics by the end of the year.
Nice.
Yeah, that's where SMART goals are super helpful.
Smart goals.
Yeah, it's an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay, I love a good acronym.
It makes it so much easier to...
It just makes it like organized.
Right, less overwhelming.
Yeah, less scary.
So like, instead of just saying, I want to learn to code, which is kind of vague, right?
Right, very broad.
A SMART goal would be like, I want to build a simple website using HTML and CSS within 3 months.
Okay, I see. So it's very
Specific.
Yeah.
You've got a timeline.
Right.
It's achievable. It's something you can actually like measure. You know when you've done it.
You know when you've reached the goal.
Exactly.
I like it.
Yeah. So you're basically creating a blueprint for
Yes.
your learning journey.
Ooh, I like that.
With clear step
Yeah, I like that a lot.
and a destination.
But even with the blueprint, I think a lot of people, myself included, struggle with finding the time to actually learn.
Right?
Life is busy.
Life is busy. Yeah.
So how do we, like, fit it all in?
Well, I think building a routine can be really helpful. Like, even just 15 minutes a day
Okay.
can make a huge difference over time.
Oh, interesting.
It's about consistency, not necessarily big chunks of time.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah, it's the little things that add up.
I like that a lot. And it reminds me, our source material actually calls this micro-learning,
Macro learning.
breaking down big things into like little bite-sized pieces.
Exactly.
That feels so much more doable.
Yeah, it's perfect for busy people.
It is.
Yeah,
And it's kind of like going back to your bridge analogy. It's like building it one brick at a time, right?
Exactly. One brick at a time.
Instead of trying to like hoist this whole section up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
And speaking of like all these different pieces,
This brings us to like another really important part of learning. Choosing the right resources.
okay, that feels overwhelming to me already.
I know, right? We're drowning in information these days.
We are.
It's
okay.
like going into this gigantic library and the books are stacked to the ceiling.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
Right, where do you even begin?
Exactly.
But the good news is you don't need everything.
Okay, that's good.
You just need the right things for you.
Okay, so how do we figure out what the right things are?
Well, I think like one thing to consider is like how you learn best.
Okay.
Are you a visual learner? Do you like listening to things? Are you more hands-on?
Right.
Knowing that can really help you narrow down your choices.
That makes sense.
And once you have a sense of that, then think about the specific thing you're trying to learn.
Yeah.
Like what kind of resources would be most helpful?
Okay.
So for example, if you're trying to learn a new language,
Yeah.
you might want like a combination of language learning apps,
Oh,
textbooks, maybe find some people to practice with,
yeah, for sure.
things like that.
Yeah, and our outline actually mentions some really great examples of different types of resources, like online courses from platforms like Coursera and Udemy
Oh yeah, those are good ones.
and Khan Academy. Those are great.
Structured learning
Yeah, they're more structured.
often have like expert instructors and interactive elements.
Right. Yeah.
So they can be a really good option.
Yeah, I like those.
And then of course there's just the massive amount of free stuff online.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started.
YouTube, podcasts, blogs.
It's never ending.
I know, right? It's amazing how much is out there.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And a lot of it's really good quality.
But how do you know? How do you sift through all that and like find the good stuff?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, because I feel like I waste a lot of time sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's where being a critical thinker comes in.
Okay.
You have to like evaluate the sources.
Do-
Like, always double check the information. See who wrote it or what website it's from.
Right, make sure it's legit.
Yeah, and be wary of anything that seems like super biased or one-sided.
Oh, for sure.
It's like building your bridge. You want to use the best materials, not just anything you find lying around.
Right, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So we're not just like passively taking in information, we're actually like,
You're evaluating.
yeah, thinking about it critically.
Okay.
But even with the best resources and learning techniques, I think we all know that learning isn't always easy.
No, it's not a straight line.
It's not.
There are bumps in the road for sure.
There are, yeah.
And actually, those bumps, those moments where you're struggling or you make mistakes, those can be some of the best learning experiences.
Really?
Oh, for sure.
I don't know if I believe that.
Think about it. Like, remember the bridge building analogy?
Okay.
No one builds a perfect bridge on the first try.
Probably not.
No, there are going to be times where you need to adjust something, reinforce something, maybe even go back and rework a whole section.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean.
So those moments of struggle, they're not failures, they're opportunities to learn and grow and refine your bridge building skills.
So instead of getting discouraged by mistakes, I should see them as like
Feedback.
feedback, yeah.
It's telling you something.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, it's like those mistakes are saying, hey, pay attention here. You need to strengthen your understanding in this area.
Okay, that's a much more positive way to look at it.
It is.
Yeah, I like that.
And just as important as embracing those mistakes is celebrating the wins, no matter how small they are. Like each milestone you reach, each concept you grasp,
Yeah.
each new skill you master, those are victories.
Okay, yeah.
They're worth celebrating.
So it's like we're putting a little flag on each section of the bridge as we finish it.
Exactly.
Work that.
Celebrate along the way. And I love that idea from the outline about keeping a learning journal. Oh, yeah.
Or even using a progress tracking app.
Yeah, I like that.
It's a way to actually see how far you've come.
Yeah.
Acknowledge those little wins along the way.
Yeah, I like that.
Because it's a journey, right? It's not just about the destination.
It's
There's
fair.
always something new to discover.
Here is.
New skills to master, new challenges to embrace.
Okay, so speaking of embracing challenges, I really liked how the outline talked about finding a community or a mentor to support your learning.
Oh yeah, community is so important.
It is.
It's like having a whole team of experienced bridge builders by your side. Right?
Yeah.
They can offer advice, encouragement.
It can stop you from falling off the bridge.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Lend
right.
a hand when you need it.
Yeah, so it's like having study buddies, joining a learning group, finding a mentor.
All of that.
Yeah.
All of
Those
that.
can all kind of enhance the experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
And don't forget about online communities too.
Oh, right. Like forums, social media groups, even just connecting with people who are interested in the same things you are,
Yeah.
that can be so helpful.
It's like we're all part of this big like learning team.
We are.
Yeah, we can all help each other out.
Exactly.
I like that a lot.
It's a beautiful thing.
So, wow, we've covered so much already.
I know, right?
And my brain is like a little bit overloaded, but in a good way.
In a good way, yeah.
In a good way.
It's a lot to process.
It is. So maybe we should take a little break to let it all sink in,
Good idea.
and we'll be back to delve even deeper into these fascinating strategies and explore how to choose the right resources for your unique learning style.
No, it's funny you mentioned feeling overwhelmed by all the information out there.
Yeah.
It really is like we've gone from this like information drought to an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Right.
And we're all just standing there with these overflowing plates,
Yeah.
not even sure where to start.
I feel that way all the time. So is that a bad thing? Like, is there such a thing as too much information? Can it actually like make it harder to learn?
That's a really interesting question, and researchers are actually looking into that right now.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, some studies suggest that too much information can lead to like what they call cognitive overload.
Cognitive overload?
Yeah, basically it's like your brain gets so full it can't process anything effectively.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's like trying to build our bridge with way too many materials at once.
Right.
It just becomes a mess, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, I think being more selective about what we consume is definitely important.
Okay.
But it's also about developing strategies for managing the information we do take in.
Okay, so like, what kind of strategies? Give me some tips.
Well, one thing that can be really helpful is to prioritize information based on how relevant it is to your goals.
Okay.
Remember those SMART goals we were talking about?
Yeah.
Those can be your guide.
Okay.
Like if your goal is to learn conversational Spanish, you probably want to focus on resources that teach you practical speaking skills.
Right.
Not necessarily the history of the Spanish language.
Yeah.
Even though that might be interesting too, you know.
Right. But it's not going to help me order a taco.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So align your information intake with your specific goals.
I like that.
Another good strategy is to break down information into smaller chunks.
Okay. Yeah.
Instead of trying to read like a whole chapter of a textbook at once.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that.
I know, right? We all do it.
Yeah.
Focus on one section at a time or one concept at a time.
Right. Like building that bridge.
Yeah, section by section.
Section by section. Okay.
Exactly.
And as you're working through those smaller chunks, experiment with different ways of processing and retaining the information.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Like summarize the key points in my own words.
Yes.
Or create diagrams or...
Visuals are always good.
Yeah, yeah.
Even teach the concepts to someone else.
Oh, interesting.
That can be really helpful.
Yeah, it's like it makes you really think about it.
Right, it does. It forces you to engage with the material.
Right, instead of just passively reading it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
And this brings us to another really important point. Knowing when to take a break.
Oh, breaks are important.
Breaks are so important.
Yeah.
I've definitely been guilty of trying to cram way too much information into my brain at once.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And it just leads to burnout, you know?
Totally.
It's like trying to build our bridge without stopping to rest.
Great.
Eventually, you're going to get tired and the quality of your work is going to suffer.
So taking breaks is actually good for learning.
It is. It's not a sign of laziness.
Okay, good.
It's like an investment in your learning.
I like that.
It allows your brain to process everything, make connections, consolidate all that learning.
It's like letting the cement dry
Exactly.
before you put the next layer of bricks on.
I like that analogy.
And it makes me think about something else we talked about earlier. Embracing failure.
Ah, yes, failure.
Yeah, because, I hit roadblocks in my learning all the time.
We all do.
It's easy to get discouraged, when you make mistakes or you just don't understand something.
It's totally natural to feel that way.
But you're saying that's a good thing?
Well, I think it can be a good thing if we reframe our perspective on it.
Okay.
Instead of seeing failure as a negative outcome, let's see it as valuable feedback.
Feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
Each mistake gives us information about where we need to improve.
Right.
What concepts we need to revisit.
So it's like those mistakes are like little signs pointing us in the right direction.
They're saying, hey, over here, you need to strengthen your understanding in this area.
Okay, yeah.
And when we approach mistakes with this mindset,
Yeah,
they lose their power to discourage us.
I like that.
They become stepping stones on our learning journey, not roadblocks.
Okay, that's a much better way to think about it.
It is, and sometimes, even with the best mindset, we need a little extra support. That's where finding a mentor or joining a learning community can be so helpful.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Having that network, whether it's a study buddy, a mentor, an online community,
Yeah.
it can make the whole process so much more enjoyable and effective.
It's like having that team of bridge builders
Exactly.
cheering you on
There to celebrate the victories with you.
and help you when you're struggling.
Exactly. Exactly.
But finding the right mentor or community, that can be tricky too, right?
It can be, but it's worth the effort.
Okay.
Start by thinking about your specific learning goals and what kind of support would be most helpful to you. Like,
Yeah.
if you're learning a new skill,
Yeah.
look for mentors or communities within that specific field.
So if I'm trying to learn web development,
Yeah,
I should look for like online forums for web developers or something.
exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And don't be afraid to reach out to people you admire in that field.
Okay.
A lot of people are really happy to share their knowledge and experience.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it's like we're all part of this big learning ecosystem
I like that.
where we can support each other and learn from each other.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about the science of learning, setting goals, managing information overload, dealing with setbacks, finding support.
It's a lot.
It is a lot,
Huh?
but I think there's one more key ingredient that we haven't really talked about yet.
Oh, what's that?
Motivation.
Ah, yes, motivation, the fuel that keeps us going.
Yeah, because without it, it's so easy to get sidetracked or discouraged or just lose interest altogether.
It's true.
So how do we stay motivated?
Yeah,
How do we keep that fire burning, especially when things get tough?
that's a great question. And I think one really powerful way to boost motivation is to connect your learning goals to your personal values and interests.
So?
When you're learning something that aligns with your passions
Yeah.
or helps you achieve something you really care about,
Right.
it becomes much easier to stay engaged and motivated.
So like if I'm passionate about environmental sustainability, learning about renewable energy technologies would be more motivating for me than, say, learning about accounting.
Exactly.
Even though accounting might be a useful skill to have, it's just not something that, lights me up.
Right, it's got to be something that speaks to you.
Yeah.
And it's not just about finding subjects that align with your existing passions. It's also about being open to discovering new interests,
Oh, okay.
like actively seeking out new areas to explore.
So we're, constantly expanding our horizons.
Exactly, adding new bridges to our mental landscape.
I like that.
And the more bridges we build, the more interconnected our knowledge becomes.
That's a really cool way to think about it.
It is. It's like this beautiful web of knowledge, and
Yeah.
it's constantly growing and evolving.
And it reminds us that learning is a journey, not a destination.
That's a great way to put it.
It's ongoing.
It is. There's always something new to discover, a new challenge to embrace, a new bridge to build.
Okay, before we get too carried away with our bridge building, I think we should probably take a little break to let all this sink in.
That's good.
We'll be right back to recap all the key takeaways from our deep dive into the art of learning anything. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of really cool stuff.
We have. It's been a brain workout.
It has, and I feel like I've learned so much already.
Me too.
But before we wrap up our deep dive into learning anything, let's do a quick recap of, the key takeaways.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so one of the things that really stuck with me is, realizing there's actually a science behind learning.
Yeah, it's not just magic.
It's not magic, it's like our brains are physically changing as we learn.
They are. They're building new connections.
Yeah, so if we understand how that works, we can, learn more effectively.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to do that is with spaced repetition.
Oh yeah, spaced repetition.
Instead of cramming everything in at once, we spread it out over time.
Right, give our brains time to, absorb the information.
Yeah, it's like building that bridge, remember?
Oh yeah, the brick?
Brick by brick.
Brick by brick, yeah.
Give each layer time to set.
Okay, and then there's active recall.
Ah, yes, active recall, one of my favorites.
Yeah, so instead of just passively reviewing the material,
You're testing yourself.
yeah, we're testing ourselves, we're trying to pull the information out of our brain.
Exactly, make it work a little harder.
Yeah, which makes those connections even stronger.
It does.
Okay, and then to keep things interesting and help us connect different ideas, we can use interleaved practice.
Mix it up.
Mix it up, yeah.
Don't just build bridges, build roads and tunnels too.
Right, keep those brains guessing.
Exactly. And all of these techniques are great, but they work even better when we have clear goals.
Right, SMART goals.
Ah, yes. SMART goals, our trusty blueprint.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound.
Gotta love a good acronym.
I do.
They keep us focused and motivated.
And it's okay to break those big goals down into smaller steps, right?
Absolutely. Celebrate those small wins.
Like putting a little flag on each section of our bridge as we go.
I love that visual.
And let's be real, we're all busy.
So busy.
So finding time to learn can be tough.
It can, but that's where micro-learning comes in.
Micro-learning, yeah, those little bite-sized chunks of learning.
Even just 15 minutes a day can make a difference.
That's reassuring.
It's all about consistency, not necessarily huge blocks of time.
And remember, we don't have to limit ourselves to just textbooks and lectures.
Oh no, there's a whole world of learning resources out there.
There is. Podcasts, online courses, YouTube videos, you name it.
Find what works for you.
Yeah, what speaks to your learning style?
Exactly.
And even with all the best resources and strategies, we're going to hit bumps in the road, right?
We are. That's just part of learning.
Yeah, mistakes can happen.
But they're not the end of the world.
They're not.
They're opportunities to learn and grow.
Feedback.
Exactly. Feedback that helps us get better.
Okay, and when we need a little extra support, there's always our learning community.
Ah, yes. Our team of bridge builders.
Always there to lend a hand or celebrate a victory.
Couldn't do it without them.
So the biggest takeaway for me is this. Anyone can learn anything.
I truly believe that.
It's not about being born smart. It's about having the right mindset and strategies.
Curiosity, persistence, and a willingness to learn from our mistakes.
Exactly.
That's what makes a master learner.
So to everyone listening, I hope this deep dive has inspired you to keep learning and growing.
Go out there and build some amazing bridges.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Happy learning, everyone.